Hello, Tiger Slash the Second here, and today I'm going to do a video on a unit that is very near and dear to my heart. This is something that I bring along with me just about any tournament that I get involved in, any sort of competitive events really. Good all-rounder unit. You sprinkle one of these into any Dark Eldar list. And you might not recognize it, but this, right here, is a Grotesque. I am up saying to yourself, wow, that's awfully small, and thought Grotesques were these big chunky resin models. Well, they are now. But back in 3rd edition, this is what the Grotesque models looked like. And this is all of the Grotesques that I use in my armies. They all look like this from 3rd edition. Now, part of that is because, in general, I like the way some 3rd edition models look. Not these in particular. As usual, I'm going to break this down into 3 sections. First of all, I'm going to talk about the models themselves. Then I'm going to talk about specific tactics and how they could fit into the army as a whole. The models themselves, let me take a moment and talk about the resin ones a bit. The resin ones look pretty darn good. They look pretty good. They got some different weapon options. They're big, they're chunky. I don't have any here to show you, but they look pretty good. Reason I don't have them? Well, there's 2 reasons. One, $25 a piece. This is the minimum squad size for a Grotesque unit. If you want to bring a Grotesque unit from GW, you are paying $75, and they are all monopose. That's reason number 2. They are all monopose. So if you're bringing any more than a few Grotesques, it's gonna look like a dance troupe. It looks ridiculous. I've seen these things deployed. I've seen formations of Grotesques deployed, and it looks like they're doing synchronized acrobatics. It's as bad as these models are, and these are some of the worst metal models I have seen GW put out, even from that era. At least they all have character. Like this, they all have their own unique thing going on. Like look at this guy. He's got like a RoboCop, a Geordie LaForge visor going on there. He's got big mean claws. He's half armored. It's like really awful chaos spawn, but I love it. It's different. It's got a scream face. It's not often that you find the old models to be more varied and unique than the new ones, but the Grotesques are definitely that. These are also substantially cheaper. You could find these things for as low as $1 a piece on eBay, which, yeah, they're ugly and they're smaller, but let's be honest, I mean, this is the base that it came with, and this is the size of the model back in 3rd edition, so it's completely tournament legal. You know, that's the base it was supplied with. So I guess there's really not a whole lot to talk about with these models. I mean, they're ugly as sin, but they're also sort of charming. They look straight up goofy, which, as in my Dark Eldar army, which is very much based off of like this 1980s sort of hair metal theme going on, that fits perfectly. These guys they work as just basic meat shields, and that's their purpose on the battlefield, and it's great. So let's talk about tactics with Grotesques a little bit. This is something that I've been wanting to cover for a very long time. Grotesques are a homunculi unit, so they're not like your normal Dark Eldar. They are, in fact, unusually tough, like borderline ridiculously tough. These guys come with ballistic skill, weapon skill 4, strength 5, toughness 5, 3 wounds apiece, initiative 4, leadership of a 3 actually, and 3 attacks base. Now, that low leadership is usually off-put by a homunculus or some other HQ being in the unit. These guys make fantastic bodyguards. As far as special rules go, these guys have Rampage. They don't have Fleet, which is a serious problem for an assault unit in a Dark Eldar army. if you intend to use these guys as like as a shock troop in the way that you might use witches or reavers or incubi. So without fleet, that hurts them. They come with feel no pain stock though. Their armor save is only a 6 up. They just have gnarl skin. So that 5 up feel no pain stock helps them a lot. If you can get these guys in a ruins cover save, that's a 4 up, 5 up, and they can go to ground. So keeping these guys alive is not really that big of an issue. As far as special gear they can have, they can get a liquefier gun. They come with flesh gauntlets, which are a poison attack, poison 4 up, and instant death on 6s. So let's just take a basic unit of 3 dudes here. You got 3 dudes. That's 9 attacks base. They have twin close combat weapons. So that ups it to 4 base. And then if they get the charge, that's 5 each. Plus, possibly Rampage. Let's face it, with a 3 model unit, it is not difficult to be outnumbered in close combat. A basic 5-man Space Marine drop pod squad is going to outnumber you. So there you're up to at least 6, possibly 8 attacks. On top of this, most things that you're going to be fighting in close combat are not going to be toughness 5. They're going to be around toughness 4. These are going to be your Farseers on bikes. These are going to be Space Marines of just about any stripe, Terminators as well. Anything short of monstrous creatures and cavalry is pretty much going to be toughness 4. So not only are you going to be wounding on 3s, but because of the special rule of poison, if you're normally wounding better than the poison, so if you'd wound on a 3 up, but the poison is poison 4 up, you get to re-roll to wound. So you get shred built in, basically. As long as you're fighting lower toughness than your strength. And any 6s of those are instant death. Now, they're not, you don't get an AP value attached with that. You're not going to be, you know, going through people's armor with that. But it helps. Like, you're just going to have, weight of dice is going to be on your side. And the current meta, I've noticed, is very much in favor of weight of dice. The person who's throwing the most dice usually will win, regardless of the stat lines being, you know, being brought to bear. So automatically, with just these 3 guys, you're looking at least 12 attacks, probably going to be more like 18. And it's all going to be coming at strength 5, and you're probably going to be re-rolling to wound. And with weapon skill 4, you have a decent chance to hit. And this is 9 wounds right here, with a 5 up feel no pain at toughness 5. Strength 10 and instant death are the only things that are going to go through these guys. And not even in all circumstances. I'll get back to that in a bit. So yeah, these guys are incredibly tough. And if they get in a close combat thing, with anything, it's just going to melt. I mean, even, you talk about monstrous creatures, all you need is a few lucky 6s, and for them to fail a save, and it's gone. It's gone. And it's not like the monstrous creature, I mean, they might get a smash attack and kill 1 Grotesque with an instant death strength 10 attack. If they hit. Because weapon skill 4, they're probably not going to hit. It's like a 50-50. And getting these guys into close combat, it's even without fleet, it's really not that difficult. You put these guys in a raider, you stick a homunculus in there, and they get furious charge on turn 3. So they're up to strength 6 on turn 3. Now they're able to, you know, punch their way through a drop pod. Now they're, with that many dice, you're probably going to be able to do it too. They're able to, these guys knock rhinos and, you know, chimeras off the table like they were nothing. Any kind of armor with a rear armor. The walkers are going to be your biggest issue. Night Titans, Dreadnoughts, that kind of thing. Because Strength 5 just isn't enough to get through that AV-12, AV-13 frontal armor. So using these guys as frontline shock troops is a pretty good idea. Now, cost, these guys are a bit expensive. They are 35 points apiece, but you get a tremendous amount of kit for that price. These are probably one of the most reasonably priced Dark Eldar models out there. In terms of points, not in terms of money. Unless you're going the eBay route and you're getting these guys for pennies on the dollar. I bought a kit of these off eBay. I bought 10 of them. for about $10, plus like $2 shipping. And you can find these guys all day for similar prices, and it's not really difficult at all to field as many of these guys as you want for less than the cost of a single modern resin grotesque, which, these guys are made of metal, and they look like potatoes already. You can't hurt them. Some of them, they do have little arms and things that you got to put on, but it's not hard. They come in like 3 pieces. Some of them are just, static. So, now you might be thinking, okay, well, I don't want to run a Dark Eldar army like in full, but I do like those grotesques, and it would be nice to be able to bring those along. Is there any sort of special things that gives them a little bit extra, maybe a formation or something like that? Well, there is a really fantastic formation called the Grotesques, and what it is it's 2 units of grotesques. So you have 2 units of grotesques and a homunculus or Urian Raykar, your choice. And in addition to just being fantastic, like, oh, I wanted 2 units of grotesques, and here's my shock troops in a nice tidy formation with their homunculus. Isn't that neat? And the homunculus can take a webway portal, and most importantly, he is not attached to either of these by default. He does not have to accompany either of them. So if you want a webway portal and you want 2 units of shock troops, there's your perfect formation. Grotesques, absolutely, I love it. It's great. It's probably the best gift given to Dark Eldar players in the entire Homunculus Coven's book. Even better than the Corpse Thief Claw, I think. Because, in addition to just being pretty much the perfect formation, you get Freakish Spectacle, which is the 12-inch bubble of -1 leadership, which is any unit in the formation. So you stick your homunculus in with a Shadow Seer with a Mask of Secrets, and that -2 leadership turns into a -3. And now you've got psychic shenanigans for days. You got latest experiments, which is basically, imagine combat drugs. Now imagine every single result is ridiculously good. Your grotesques randomly generate one of the following powers: +1 strength, +1 toughness, fleet, shred, rage, or a feel no pain of a 4-up. Now, the worst one on there, because these guys have their built-in poison attacks, is shred, because it's not often you're going to be going up against things that are toughness 5 or higher. So when the worst thing on the entire list is shred, you're looking at a pretty good list of buffs. +1 toughness, hands down, is the best thing on there, because not only does that make these guys toughness 6, it brings with that, you're now immune to instant death on strength 10 attacks. You're now immune to instant death on D weapons. These guys rolled +1 toughness, took a D weapon to the face, and survived. But even better than that, the Grotesques gives you the Power from Pain table from the Homunculus Coven's book, which on turn 2, turn 1 with a homunculus, is fearless. So that leadership problem these guys traditionally have, gone. Unless you're being targeted by psychic attacks, that's no longer a problem. Turn 3 gives you fear, which is nice for a close combat unit. Not always useful, but it's nice to have, as long as you remember it. Turn 4, they get It Will Not Die. On a 3-wound model, that's priceless. Turn 5, Fearless turns into Zealot. Okay, so now you're re-rolling to hit that first turn of combat. Because you're poisoned and you're probably fighting something toughness 4, you're now re-rolling to hit and re-rolling to wound. And you're chucking at least 4 attacks out. On the charge, 5. And this is first turn of combat, period. So if these guys get charged, they still get to re-roll to hit. And on turn 6, they get Eternal Warrior. But these guys probably aren't going to see turn 6, because by then either the game will have ended or someone will have gotten hungry and you called it, or you know how those things go. So the Grotesques, absolutely fantastic. It gives you the better power from pain table. It gives you a 1d6 buff on that table. It gives you access to bringing these guys along in a great tight little formation. They can still bring their dedicated transports of raiders. They can even bring their own rides, which let them deep strike. They can have a homunculus, which can take a webway portal. Oh, one other thing. These guys, they're special dude. I made mine with just to make it a little bit more ridiculous. I made my aberration with a Talos bit that I wasn't using, so you can see which one he is. The aberration there. 10-point upgrade, gets an additional attack, it's nice, and an additional leadership. At leadership 4, that's pretty much useless. It gives it access to some war gear. Now, these guys can all take liquefier guns. Some people like those. I personally don't. I think it's a little overpriced at 15 points a pop. But, it's up to you. These guys, the aberrations, can take a scissor hand for 10 points. This does not replace the Flesh Gauntlet, it merely it gives you another option. You get to choose whether you want to use the Flesh Gauntlet or the Scissor Hand. The Scissor Hand is also a poison attack, but instead of instant death on 6s, it gives you rending. Personally, I like to bring the aberration with the Scissor Hand because the rending is so important when you're fighting against anything armor-based. That means that if you get into close combat with a Dreadnought, it's not an automatic wipe for an entire squad of dudes and you're just basically holding on to see how long you can last. It means that, on a lucky 6 to pen, you just might get you might just get a penetration, you might just get a hull point off or two before the Dreadnought pastes you. So how do I specifically run these guys? Well, I like to put them in raiders. I think the best way to use them is to put them in raiders, not deep strike them. Just use them as a meat shield. Basically have, if you could imagine each of these dudes as a raider, this is where they're at, and this is my main force back here. You got a squad in each raider, and they just push up the field, and they act as a buffer. Anything that wants to get to your dudes back here has to go through this, and this is very difficult to get through. Now, I like to run squads of 5. 4 if I'm having a homunculus in the raider too. I like to fill the raider up with these guys. And of course, I'll run the Grotesquerie because why not? So that means I'm usually looking at about 10 of these guys. Now, at 35 points apiece, that's 350 points of Grots plus 2 raiders. Now, you're going to, of course, want the Dark Lances on the raiders. Why wouldn't you want the Dark Lances on the raiders? So now it's another 120 points. They're up to 470 now. Plus, the homunculus, so you might swap one of these guys out for a homunculus or whatever. Homunculus is 70 points base. Depending whether or not you want the webway portal, you got that to factor in there. Homunculus can also take a scissor hand. Highly recommend it, just in case he gets into a challenge with someone. You want to be able to swing with something. So for 10 points, scissor hand gives him rending and poison 4 up. It's not a bad deal any way you slice it. So yeah, I'll usually run 2 of these guys like that, and then I'll add another Grotesquerie, and that's what I run. Is about 2 Grotesqueries. That's 20 grots, and that's about $20 worth of models right there. And this is pretty much half, if not more than half, of a competitive Dark Eldar list. And let me tell you what these guys are good against here. These guys are good. The Corn Demon Dog list that's all over the place, and it's got the Screamers, the Screamer packs, and the Corrupted Objectives. And let me tell you, this thing will eat that like it was lunch meat. It is absolutely insane, and I will tell you what happens every single time. Every single time I play one of those lists, or any sort of MSU spam list that relies on close combat, which there's a surprising amount of. They will all rush towards the Grotesques on turn 1 and try to corrupt as many objectives as possible. Of course. Of course you're going to do that. And they're playing that list, that's what you should do. All that means is you just walk out of your boat, and you charge into them and try to make sure that you're outnumbering them. Now, a good strategy to run is to replace one squad, because they do have low leadership, and that can open them up to psychic shenanigans. Replace one unit in each squad with an HQ. So you've got 2 Grotesques here, you've got 2 Homunculi. That instantly boosts these guys' power from pain up a level. That's fantastic. Do that. Take a Succubus with an Armor Misery, a Haywire Grenade, and the Archaic Glaive. That gives you a little bit of challenge support. It makes her permanently Strength 4 with the 2-handed Archaic Glaive at AP2. And the Armor of Misery just stacks with the natural -1 leadership. So in a 6-inch bubble, you're at their enemy is at -3 leadership. And it gives you a tremendous initiative boost as well. So if you're trying to run units down, as if these guys aren't going to pulverize anything they come into contact with, but if you're trying to run units down, it's great for that. And it gives the Succubus a little bit extra of a save. It's a 4-up, 6-up. It's 15 points. It's good. It's a good thing to just sort of staple on there. And in the last one, you could bring an Archon with a Shadow Field, and Haywire Grenades. Archon with a Shadow Field, Haywire Grenades, 105 points. Now you've got a 2-up invul save to eat that first wave of, say, Tau Overwatch. Because once you start getting into those close combats, once things start getting eaten up by close combat, the Overwatch becomes less and less of a concern. But that first one from Tau, especially if they brought the formation that lets them shoot Overwatch with anything in a 12-inch radius, that is the worst. Bring a 2-up invul save. It will save the Grotesques. You'll probably lose the Archon in the process, but that's okay. Stick them all on the Raiders and just chuck them up the field and pray to God that you don't get your boats shot out from under you. Always try to look when you're working with these guys. Always try to look for where you can find a rampage opportunity, because getting those extra attacks, even if you're only wounded on 6s, always look for that rampage opportunity, because it affects every single model. That's the other thing. It's not just the unit. It affects every single model. So if a unit of 4 of these guys gets rampage off, then that means all of them. That's 4 attacks minimum, possibly an additional 12 attacks. It just depends how you roll the D3. Also, another thing to keep in mind as well, that homunculus that you're bringing along with the Grotesques, that you can staple to something else with a webway portal, when he gets Fearless, that of course confers to the whole unit. So you could, webway portal something in and give it Fearless with the homunculus. It also that Zealot that they get on turn 5, or the homunculus gets on turn 4, that also confers to the whole unit. So whatever he is attached to is going to have Zealot. So that is pretty much all I have to say about these ugly dudes right here. As you can tell, they have fantastic paint jobs all the way around. But yeah, for the points cost, and as just a Dark Eldar unit, especially for the money cost, like the value you are getting, purchasing these models used, or I find these things in their packages still, and they're stupidly cheap. You can get an entire Grotesque for like $10 using old models, and they look terrible. They look terrible. But I mean, as a dance troupe, this is one of those instances where it's like, yeah, the old model looks bad, but the new model looks bad too. So if you're going to be looking at a bad model, it might as well be cheap.